Boom, we got a thumbnail.
Bibliosophie.
Hello internet friends, my name is Sophie. Welcome back to my channel if you're new here. No, that's the other way around. Welcome to my channel if you're new here. Welcome back if you're not. I am feeling very rusty about talking to camera. It's been just over 2 weeks since I sat down to talk to my phone, and I'm feeling weird about it. I don't desperately need to today, but I sort of felt like I needed to force myself to talk, because if I didn't now, I never would again. This is overly dramatic thinking, but go with it. It's been a difficult time for me. I have had a difficult month. I was already having a sort of busy and difficult month, but in the past 2 weeks it's been a lot worse. I'm grieving a close, important death, and a very sudden one. So with all of the emotions, sadness, difficulties, and also difficult logistics, a lot of difficult logistics that ensue with that. And yeah, quite frankly, I haven't had the inclination to sit down and talk about books. But today I'm trying to force myself out of that silence, just so that I kind of get back into a swing of things. I am going to try to make this as easy on myself as possible. So I'm going to catch you up on some of the books that I have been reading, and also talk about some various new books that I have, because I have a lot of new books. What have I been reading? I finished a few days ago Radden Keefe's Say Nothing. I mentioned this book in a previous vlog, my most recent vlog. I was just starting it, and now I have finished it. I really liked it. I'm not the first person to have really liked it. It does really well in reviews and scores from critics and readers alike. And I'm one of those people who liked it. The subtitle for this book is A True Story of Murder and Memory in Northern Ireland, and that's what it is. I think I might be getting the subtitle very slightly wrong, but those are the keywords in general. The framing device of the book is a cold case of the disappearance of a mother from her home in Belfast in 1972, and through that lens, Keefe explores the troubles in Northern Ireland, especially at their height in the 70s, but also prior and afterwards. A lot of people really like the novelistic, very personal writing that Keefe uses in this book and in his other books to describe journalistic historic events. And that is definitely a strong asset of the book. But for me, what really made the book very interesting and kind of a punch of, wow, ooh, he did something, was in the last section where he brings it all together. Throughout the book, we are given the various stories of a bunch of different people from a bunch of different sides. We're especially following a lot of IRA members, but not exclusively. We're also hearing about kind of the tactics on both, or really I should say all sides. And then he brings it together in really the memory aspect of things and the silence aspect of things. What is narrative? What is the purpose of narrative? Who gets to make narrative? What are the complications of memory, complicity, cultural memory? What is the difference between cultural memory and history, of local memory, of neighborhood memory, the scars that bodies carry, sometimes completely literally the genealogy of conflict and scars and of telling. And that's also where he's implicating himself and people like him in the research of things. What do we do when we try to get the facts? So that to me was the most impressive aspect of the book, and I really enjoyed how he brought it all together. I think the cold case aspect of the book is something that is an in for some people, and then it becomes disappointing that it's not really about the case. I definitely saw this a couple of times in some StoryGraph reviews from people wherein they said, well, this was not what I thought it was, but it's more interesting to me for that. I am in the process of reading Becca Rothfeld's All Things Are Too Small, Essays in Praise of Excess. I'm about halfway through, and this is a series of essays in praise of excess, basically. This is part memoir-ish, kind of personal essay, cultural analysis, criticism, a little bit of critical theory, a little philosophy, a little Marxist theory, all clumped in together, the kind of thing that I eat up on excess. And not really much more specific than that. It's a very loose connective tissue between essays for the book, but even within essays between some various points. Some of the essays work better than others, I think, for that. I like her writing style, and some of the things that she gets into are really, really interesting. Some of the subjects she's talking about are very, very interesting to me. And then some things are just not as interesting, or I think not as fleshed out in the way that I would potentially. But I'm on the ride with her. I don't, agree with everything. I don't need to. But yeah, I'm definitely on that ride. I am close to done with Simone de Beauvoir, Le Deuxième Sexe, The Second Sex, the first volume, because if you've ever seen the book in its totality, it gets much thicker than this. I don't have really intelligent short form things to say about this book at this point. I don't have the courage to get into it, really. It has been definitely interesting and honestly fun to read for me. What am I taking away from this? What I'm taking away from this is how much I already know, how much of the things she talks about have made it into my bloodstream, sometimes directly from her, because I have read excerpts of this particular book, and especially I've read so many other people referencing this book that so much of this is stuff that I take for granted, but also through other feminist writers that came a little bit before, but especially kind of contiguous and subsequent to her. It ages really quite well. And it's not perfect, of course. This is a piece of white feminism, but it doesn't fall into too many, so far, pitfalls of that. The first volume is dealing with sections on biology, on history, and now I'm in myths of womanhood. And yeah, I don't have so many pithy takeaways. Should you read this? I'm not sure. It's a project. I think it's not, if you've read a lot of other feminist work, I don't know if you're going to learn anything. You'll definitely recognize a lot of things. But if you've read a lot of feminist work, then you're probably the kind of person who wants to read this. So it feels like a sort of a completionist reading for me. I'm going to recommend a podcast that talks about Beauvoir generally and Second Sex specifically, and I'll link to it in my notes. Arts and Ideas from BBC. A couple of years ago, there was a kind of roundtable discussion with various scholars, writers, and they're bringing various interesting readings of Beauvoir, their history with Beauvoir, and also kind of, it makes a pretty good crash course on Beauvoir as a figure, some of her writing, and also how we can expand from it. And it's in English too, because it's BBC. So I'll link to that. I found that conversation interesting. I want to talk about some new and upcoming releases that I have my grubby little mitts on. The transition point for that is going to be Blue Ruin by Kunzru, which I have begun just barely reading. This is out by Knopf on May 14th. It is a pandemic novel. We are following Jay, a middle-aged artist who's not really practicing his art and whom life has really hit hard. During the pandemic, he becomes reunited accidentally with somebody from his past, and that serves as a launching point for memory play of their shared past, how their lives have diverged, the London art world, class and wealth disparity, New York, probably art world. I'm not sure exactly where it's going to go, but I am enjoying it so far. The next book is a bit of a plug. It's not a completely personal plug. It's definitely a plug. It's a bit of a personal plug because it is a book written by my one and only mother. Beyond Eureka, The Rocky Roads to Innovating, I forgot the subtitle, of course, is my mother's newest book. It's out from Georgetown University Press in a couple of days, May 1st. You can pre-order it now. And I'm just gonna outright plug that you do pre-order it. It's really good. Of course, I'm biased because it was written by my one and only beloved mother. And also, additionally, I'm biased because I have been part of the gestation process of this book for a while, her thinking through it, talking about it. I was, I think, her first reader, and read various iterations of the draft. So obviously I am deeply entrenched. I cannot give you an unbiased review of this book, but I'm really proud of the book that my mother has written. This is about innovation, and it is about complicating our vision of what innovation is, complicating the apropos that we have, the cliches that we have around innovating and inventing, individualism, complicating the chronology of what innovation is, that everything is this evolving timeline of this person did that and then this person did that. But in fact, she argues that it's a much more complicated, multi-pronged system that is at play, and therefore is a lot harder to analyze. It is chock full of case studies, of histories, some personal histories as well, and really useful facts, very useful viewpoints for people who are seeking to innovate in their fields. It is meant to be more of a business book, but quite honestly, I think it's a very inspiring book for anybody who's looking to understand and grapple with this thing that we kind of all have to, even if we're not in technical fields, which is what is innovation, what is creation, and how does it happen across different parts of society for different people? What are some of the things at play? So that is my plug. That is my family plug. Meanwhile, the last batch of books that I'm going to talk about, I know very little about because I was not imbricated in their creation and I haven't done my research. I usually talk about books that I have read, am reading, or have really looked into. So this is kind of new. I'm kind of going in blind, but I have some various books that I'm interested in reading that have been sent to me. So I'll share with you vaguely what they're about. I'll discover with you what they're about in some cases. Hogarth sent me two Karen Jennings books. Crooked Seeds is her most recent novel, which came out earlier this month, and they also sent me her previous novel, An Island. I have never read any Karen Jennings, so I'm actually really intrigued to read either or maybe both of these books. She's a South African writer, and she is writing about kind of infrastructure and society in South Africa, typically. I don't know what An Island is about at all. Let's read the beginning of the blurb. Samuel has lived alone on an island off the coast of an unnamed African country for more than 2 decades. He tends to his garden, his lighthouse, and his chickens, content with a solitary life. Routinely, the nameless bodies of refugees wash ashore, and Samuel, who understands that the government only values certain lives, certain deaths, always buries them himself. That actually sounds really interesting, so I'll definitely be dipping into this. Meanwhile, Crooked Seeds takes place in Cape Town. Cape Town 2028, the land cracks from a years-long drought, the nearby mountains threaten to burn, and the queue for the water trucks grows ever longer. Yeah, I'm definitely intrigued by both of these, and will definitely at least start them and probably read them. They're also both pretty short. I have All Fours by Miranda July. This is coming out also on May 14th. This is from Riverhead. This is about an artist who attempts or begins a cross-country drive and then stops it. A semi-famous artist announces her plan to drive cross-country from LA to New York City. 30 minutes after leaving her husband and child at home, she spontaneously exits the freeway, beds down in a nondescript motel, and immerses herself in an entirely different journey. This actually is really intriguing. I have never fallen in love with Miranda July's previous books, her short story collection, and her previous novel. I've read parts of, but didn't finish because I wasn't super into them. I am definitely going to give this a shot. I like the premise. It's very much Miranda July, I think, writing about herself, which is what she tends to do, and that's great. And I think it's going to be sort of July does the artist way in a motel. That's what I'm going to minimize it to in my mind. We'll see if I'm wrong, but I'll definitely at least dip into this. I'm intrigued. I'm definitely also intrigued by The Material by Camille Bordas. This is another art-making creator sort of book. I believe it's a comedy. What's the description? For fans of campus novels and stories about art making and the mechanics of comedy, the novel's clever conceit is not only funny, but deeply intelligent and illuminating. What is this? Can I give you a bit more about what this is about exactly? Not quickly, so I'm not going to. But I'm intrigued. This is out by Random House on June 11th. I'll definitely dip into this. I'm very, very intrigued by this as well. And finally, Long Island Compromise by Taffy Brodesser-Akner. Akner, who you might know as the author of Fleischman is in Trouble. I never read that novel, but have vaguely been meaning to for a while. This is out by Random House, July 9th. It says so right here. And I don't know anything about this at all. I assume it takes place on Long Island, but let's discover together what it is about. In 1980, a wealthy businessman named Carl Fletcher is kidnapped from his driveway in a cloistered town on the nicest part of Long Island, brutalized and held for ransom. He is returned to his wife and kids less than a week later, only slightly the worse, and the family begins the hard work of moving on with their lives, resuming their prized places in the saga of the American dream, comforted in the realization that though their money may have been what endangered them, it is also what assured them their safety. Okay, so we've got some, American materialism, American economy. I'm intrigued also by this. We'll see when I get to this one, probably in the order in which I have talked to you about them. So yeah, that's my little update of various books in my life and other things. Thanks for watching, and yeah, I'll catch you in the next video.